Hey everyone, Dr. Greg here with just a quick announcement before we started today's episode. And I really need your help from my loyal listeners, so if you can help me with this favor, I'd appreciate it. I've been creating some videos that solve specific psychotherapy issues, like the hidden ways we self-sabotage and why most mental health advice doesn't work for high-performing individuals, over on my YouTube channel in the past few weeks. Now, I wasn't originally planning on bringing the audio of these to the podcast feed, but a few people have asked me about it, so I wanted to leave the decision up to you all. If you think there'd be value in listening to the audio versions of these videos, please head on over to my YouTube channel and leave a comment down below and let me know. The link is in the description below. I would love to hear from you. If you'd rather keep the podcast feed exactly how it is, no problem. I am happy to do that because, quite frankly, I am just thrilled and honored and grateful that all of you continue to support this show as it is and as you have been over the years. So again, link in the description. Please let me know one way or the other. And now on to today's episode. Welcome back, everyone, to Meditations by Gregory T. Obert, bringing you the best new guided meditations and mental health discussions every week. I'm your host, clinical psychologist, Dr. Gregory T. Obert. Thank you so much for joining me today. And I have a treat for you. I am so excited for this interview. So with me today, I have David La Torre. And here's a little bit about him. For over a quarter century, Pennsylvania native David La Torre has been a well-regarded public affairs and communications strategist who has served as a spokesperson for high-profile clients and crises. His new memoir, Soda, takes readers deep into the hidden cocaine culture of the 1970s and 80s suburban America, told through a child's eyes, his. It's a story of a young boy who was forced to grow up too fast, but it's also a story of inner strength and ultimately forgiveness. He learned that by forgiving those who hurt him most, he could put the past behind him and build a beautiful life. As a Gen X child of the 70s and 80s, David unknowingly developed a skill set for handling crises, which he would later use while serving 2 governors and working as a crisis communications counselor during some of Pennsylvania's most high-profile events, including the aftermath of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the Penn State Jerry Sandusky scandal, and the miraculous Q Creek mine rescue. His book Soda will be released in 2027, and David was gracious enough to give me some excerpts to read ahead of this interview. And wow, we have a lot to talk about. David, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Greg. That's a great job reading that bio. It's a lot of tongue twisters in there.
Well, thank you for helping with some of the pronunciations.
You bet.
I will put that on my resume that I'm a good bio reader. So I guess to start off, I would love to hear a little bit about this book, Soda. I mean, that's the main reason that you reached out to me to talk about it. And, you know, I get a number of different requests to read various books. Some of them don't always interest me. This one, I was like, yeah, there's some substance use in there. Some, I say. But I didn't know what I was getting into.
Right.
And after reading the excerpts, I mean, I'm hooked on this. So I would love it if you could say a little bit more just about kind of your upbringing, where you come from, and
Sure.
why now with this book?
Well, first of all, why now? My mother passed away in 2024. My father has been gone since 2006, but really kind of triggered me with my mom's passing in 2024 that it's a story that's been inside me. Soda's been inside me. I've known the title of the book since I was probably 20. I knew someday I would write the book, but here I am almost 56. And quite frankly, Greg, I just didn't want to deal with it for the longest time. I've been a writer by trade. I was an English lit major in college. I have a master's degree in journalism. I practiced journalism for a number of years before I became press secretary, as you said, to a couple governors in Pennsylvania, and have been in PR for 25 years. So I have written more for other people than I have for myself. And I've loved doing it, and I love my job. But that book's been in the back of my mind for years. And then when my mom passed in 2024, I said, it's time. I talked to my sister about it. I have a younger sister, Caroline, who's in the book. She's like, you have to do it. And I talked to my wife about it, and she said the same thing. And my wife's been incredibly supportive of this whole process. As anybody knows who is writing a book, you have to have a lot of selfish time. And she's been great throughout all of it. And I really, really appreciate that she's afforded me the time to do it and has been so supportive. Soda in and of itself is basically about the first 20 years of my life growing up in South Central Pennsylvania in the Harrisburg area, Harrisburg being the capital of Pennsylvania. And I grew up in suburban utopia, as I say. It was, my first 4 years we lived in the city of Harrisburg, and then folks started moving out into the suburbs, and we were part of that first sort of gold rush into suburban perfection and the idea of having an acre of land and a ranch house with 3 bedrooms and 2.5 baths and all those things that people are looking forward to when they wanted to try suburbia in the early 70s. And I just remember being really excited about it and thinking my parents were the two coolest people in the world. And they would have parties in the house on the weekends. And there would be so many people. And so I was a sponge and I just watched everything. And what I didn't realize I was watching at the time, and I would soon sort of start to figure out, was my parents were heavily involved in a drug culture of the 70s and 80s. It certainly started in the 60s. And at a very early age, I watched my parents have parties and smoke pot, and pot was constantly around us. And I write about it in the book. I write about in detail how you can roll a joint because I've watched my father roll probably hundreds of them. And like anything at that time, at least in my mind, marijuana led to cocaine and eventually crack. And my father, who was an incredibly intelligent, maybe the smartest person I've ever known, but just was very self destructive and had this notion that he could be his own boss. He was a successful salesman, winning trips everywhere, taking my mom on trips to Florida and the Caribbean for winning awards. And but that wasn't good enough for him. He wanted something more, and eventually he becomes a drug dealer and sadly becomes a user and abuser, and at the same time gets my mother involved. She becomes an alcoholic. She develops a problem with pills and hardcore drugs like cocaine, and basically spirals out of control with my father eventually landing in prison. My mother deeply addicted to alcohol and drugs, and me being in the middle of it. We were able to. My sister was able to go stay with my aunts, but somebody had to be home with my mother, and I was 16, 17 at the time, and really the book is all about everything we had to go through with our parents, and I wanted to write it, Greg, because I wanted people to understand that you don't have to be your parents. Listen, you have great parents. God bless you. I'm very happy for you. But if you grow up in a difficult parentified child situation where you basically become the adult in the house, um, you don't have to become them. And it's my hope that when people read this, they see that there is a way out. If there's a kid who might pick up this book who's in high school and going through some of the same things I did back then, they can hopefully see that you do not have to. I say it in the book, our past doesn't have to be our future. And I really want people to take that away from this book. Yes, there's a lot of graphic material in this book. I watch my father with pounds and pounds of cocaine on his desk, cutting it up, packaging it, talking about it. I've seen domestic violence. I've heard horrific stories. I've been in my house when somebody tried to rob us and threatened to kill us, and so I could go on and on and on. But through it all, if you can find yourself somehow, if you can hold on to your identity and what you want in life, it's my hope people when they read Soda can see if that guy can do it, I can do it too.
And I think that is what makes your book, well, when it does come out, it's going to make it such a gift to so many people out there because, as you said, there's some heavy stuff in there. In fact, as I was reading, it reminded me very much of The Glass Castle, if you've ever read that. For those out
Yes.
there, yeah, maybe a similar type story, and it's hard. It was hard to read that book, The Glass Castle. It was hard to read the parts of Soda that you gave me because yes, for those who maybe don't want to read about heaviness, there's a lot of heaviness. Probably every four-letter word you can think of. There are definitely some harrowing situations. In fact, the one that you mentioned, Dave, that stood out to me was the burglar in your house. I mean, that very easily could have ended in severe injury or death. I'm sure it was terrifying at the time, and this is unfortunately the reality of addiction. And I think there's a lot of people that can feel hopeless, can feel lost, and here you are giving them a lifeline to some sort of exit, to some sort of better life, and that's just incredible.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. There was a moment in my life where the calm moments in my house were few and far between, where you could really sit back and enjoy yourselves. And one of those days we were driving home and we pull into the driveway and there's a car in the driveway and there's two people in the car and my dad gets out and looks in and he comes over. He goes, I have no idea who they are. He goes into the house. I get out of the car. I walk across the front yard to look in through our big bay windows and I see a guy in the house and I see my dad run at him and basically put him up against the wall. And I go in the house and my mom's yelling, don't go in the house. And I was 10 years old at the time. And, you even noted in the book, like, you wish you could be braver in moments like that, right? And I was just so scared. I was just petrified watching this happen. This guy was a lot bigger than my dad, but you did not mess around with my old man. Like, he was tough. And my mom comes in the house and she goes in the back room and comes out with a gun. I had no idea they had a gun at that time. And that shocked me. And, they were not armed, but the other two people came in the house and one of the guys was really agitated. And I'll never forget it. He said, let's do them. And that's the name of the chapter. Let's do them. And I'll never forget that. And I looked at him and he looked at me and I felt like at that moment, like this could be it. My dad, uh, my dad put an end to the situation real quick. He asked my mom for the gun and without getting a graphic detail for your listeners, he made it very clear if anybody goes to anywhere near my son, it's over. They ended up running out of the house, and the burglar ended up doing jail time. But that really struck home for me because there was a moment earlier in the book where I talk about somebody shooting through our house. They shot a gun through our house, kind of sending a message. They, for some reason, they were not happy with my father. I think there was a drug deal going wrong or a misunderstanding. I'll never know the truth. But this person, and we think, I'll never know who it was, but I'm pretty sure we knew who it was. And I talk about him in the book, shot through our house. And my parents never called the police. And that's the first time I really realized, like, why wouldn't you call the police? Somebody just shot a gun. And here's the bullet lodged in the outer wall of our house where it tried to pierce through. And why wouldn't you call the police? And in that situation where the burglar was there, I'm like, guys, they sat down to talk about it. Like, what are we gonna do? And I'm like, you've got to call the police. Like, what are you crazy? Like, you've got to call the police. And my father ended up calling the police. And what's really interesting is years later, when my father was arrested for cocaine possession, they noted the break in the affidavit for probable cause where they used to arrest somebody. And they noted that the person said that they had broken into my house because they had heard that my father was a cocaine dealer and had some stolen silver, which was really weird. I don't even know where that came from. Um, but, that break in all those years before he was arrested really kind of set the table. And it really sort of sent me in a spiral too, Greg, because I just knew, like, I never felt safe again. I never felt, how could you? And and in some ways, I'm trying to protect my sister, who's 3.5 years younger than me,
Mm-hmm.
the whole time from it. And she was actually, by the way, tougher than I was, younger and tougher, and didn't suffer the emotional. Well, let me just say she didn't suffer fools. Let me put it that way. She suffers emotional issues from our childhood. Who wouldn't? But I was more emotional with my parents and tried to emotionally plead with them at different times throughout our childhood to, um, go straight to fix situations. She didn't even bother. She knew it was never going to happen.
I mean, I can't even imagine what it's like to have to experience something like that at 10 and how that sense of safety was just completely shattered. And I noted a number of times in reading your excerpts how you were forced to grow up so
Right.
fast around people who were, well, chronologically adults, but
Right.
not necessarily mentally. And how even the times where you wanted to escape uh, mentally, the Atari was one that stood out to me, or the football
Right.
game that you had. It seemed like you couldn't even get moments of peace with those because all of this stuff bled into your life. And then, of course, that protective factor of wanting to, help your sister, even if she is tough. I believe you. I'm sure she's tough. I will be sure not to cross her ever. But it's also that protective nature that you were thinking about and dealing with. And I guess I just am curious how all of these experiences impacted not just your own mental development, but also your spiritual development.
Right. Right. I would tell you my spiritual development was stunted for a lot of years. When you go through things like that, you start to not believe in God and being saved and all the things you learn about going to Catholic school. I graduated from a Catholic high school. I even ended up going to Catholic college eventually, Franciscan College, St. Francis. And but for a long time there, spirituality really didn't have any role for me in my life. It was basically survival day to day. And maybe that had a lot to do with the fact that when we were young and before I could ever really realize what was going on, we were in church every week in our Catholic church every week going to mass. And then it started getting further and further apart in our appearances. And then there was one point where they would still make me go to CCD classes. For that's for kids who didn't go to Catholic schools at the time. I started out at public schools, and then I went away on a religious retreat to a seminary. And at the end of the weekend, we had a mass at the seminary, and I remember being confused about something in mass and asking one of my CCD teachers, hey, what is this or that? And I remember her just, she wouldn't even look at me. And she said, well, if you went to mass, you would know. And I was a
Oh,
kid.
wow.
And I was a kid. And like, that crushed me. It absolutely crushed me. And after that, we packed up the rooms where we stayed in and took a bus home. And the whole bus home, I just remember thinking, thanks, Dad. Thanks, Dad, because of you, because we don't go to church anymore. Like, I can't even go on this and get away from it and get away from being inadequate. When you feel like your family life is horrible, you feel horrible about yourself. You feel inadequate. You feel like you've done something wrong. And I constantly felt that way growing up. Like, it's got to be me. Part of it is me. And then you get to a point in life where you start to grow up. And I remember leaving for college saying, I'll never be like my father. I'll never be like my father. I'll never treat my family like that. I'll never treat my future wife like that. And you're determined to be different. But the reality is you can't escape your childhood trauma. Um, there are learned responses that that just tick off in your mind. And it was a tough road for me for a long time in relationships. I think I've definitely torpedoed relationships in my life because I was afraid of being more like my father. I've seen situations. I talk about them in my book with my college girlfriend and realizing I was treating her like my father treated my mother. So a lot to unpack there. But I'm happy to say I'm much more spiritual now. When you have perspective in life, when you grow up, you become a little bit more mature and think about things. And when you realize a lot of that stuff that happened wasn't your fault and you weren't inadequate. And when you start doing things positive in life and feeling, it makes you feel better about yourself. So I think when you feel better about yourself, you're more open to spirituality. And I think I'm starting to get there.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad to hear that. A line that I often say to a lot of clients that have dealt with any kind of trauma in their past because I'm falling into these old patterns. I wish I could just stop. The reality is, though, you can't because, well, not
Right.
that you can never do it, but just that
it's not like a light switch that you can flip on and off. Okay, I'll just stop doing this thing. If something has been modeled for you for years and you find yourself, as you mentioned, I never felt safe again, you find yourself in that fight or flight state constantly, near constant. It is very hard to change any kind of learned patterns. So the fact that you're saying, not only am I starting to kind of come out of that place, but I'm also starting to maybe pick up and foster areas of my life that were neglected previously because of the experiences you went through as a kid, and of course that very judgmental teacher that you had. This ridiculous response. It's just great to hear that those areas of your life are finally getting the water and the nurturing, the nutrients that they need.
And sometimes everybody finds those moments differently. Um, for me, it's largely been on my own, trying to figure it out. And I think soda's been very medicinal for me in achieving that spirituality that we're talking about, finding it, rediscovering it, in my life, and applying it to my personal relationships, and my approach to my professional life as well. I think spirituality really helps you make decisions in life that aren't necessarily selfish ones, but for the betterment of your family and the people you work for. Um, and so that I think that's been very, very important to me. Um, and when I wrote that book, that just it made me think a lot about that. And I wrote the book because I had that story in me for years, and I'm a writer, and I thought it would be a compelling story, and I wanted to share with people that there is a way out. And I just don't think I ever really understood how good it would be for me to do it, to write it, how good it would be for me mentally, and in my lifetime of recovery, because it is a lifetime of recovery. The stuff I've seen, you wouldn't, Hollywood likes to do a lot of movies about in the city, and The Godfather, and big major motion pictures about drug dealing, like movies like Blow with Johnny Depp. And but it's never they've never really told the story about families like mine in suburban America where drugs were prevalent. They really, really were, and I wanted to share that. So hopefully, there were other kids out there like me, and kids out there now in suburban America. Cocaine's basically been replaced by meth and opiates, as the main addiction drug these days that is destroying families. But I wanted them to see that they weren't the first ones in suburban America to go through this. They won't be the last, but they can make it out. I've just found that writing that book, I hope they get that. I hope they understand that. But even if I never sell a copy of Soda, even if I never sell a copy of it, it's done so much for me and my recovery, and I'm so thankful for it.
I'm glad it's been deeply personally healing for you as well. When you're talking about Hollywood, I've had very, very, very little interaction with Hollywood, which is a
Right.
friend who has worked as a cameraman. But
That counts. That
that
counts.
counts, I guess, yes. So, when I think about people pitching ideas to Hollywood, that's too on the nose, or that's not
Mm.
realistic enough or big enough, right? We need the Scarfaces of the world.
Right. Well
Great
said.
movie, love that movie,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yet there's something lost in that movie because it's a movie. It's fictional. And reading about something that happened to you, and not just to you and your sister, but also to the many, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands, millions of other Gen X kids during that time. I mean, there's just something that hits a little bit more, the emotional impact. And I'm sure it wasn't easy to dig into those wounds, right? You think that they're
Right.
scarred up, and you kind of just had to keep digging into them. And wow, just what a great gift you can give.
Well, maybe somebody's asking right now, well, what does soda mean? Like, why is that the title of your book? And It's born from a moment in my life that I thought at the time was one of the greatest moments of my life ever. And it was New Year's Eve, 1978. I was 8 years old, and I got to go out to dinner with my parents on New Year's Eve. The first time I wasn't shuttled off to my grandparents, where I was in bed by 9 o'clock, and my sister still had to go to my grandparents. So I'm like, I'm the big guy. I'm like an adult, and I write about how we go to this great restaurant in downtown Harrisburg, and all the city's lit up at night. Like I feel like a kid in New York City. They feed me get my first ever filet mignon, and boy, man, am I a big kid. I've got sparkling grape juice. They've got champagne. There's another couple with us. We're all celebrating. Like I was in heaven, absolute heaven. And at one point, my mom and so there's another couple with us, and they were boyfriend, girlfriend. And so the gentleman's girlfriend and my mom get up to go to the bathroom. And I'm sitting there and I'm working on my filet mignon. And my dad's friend says, Hey, David, we know you see a lot at the house, right? You see a lot. You see us, you see the drug you see cocaine a lot in the house. And I'm like, yeah. I didn't even know where it was coming from. Like, what's the deal here? Like, why are we talking about this? And it turns out that his friend was basically his co-dealer. I think bankrolling my father a lot to be able to go out and buy the cocaine and sell the cocaine, then they share the profits and etc. And he says, "Do you talk about it with your friends?" No, no. It's funny. I didn't really think much about I talk about a little bit in the book. I never really thought about it as being illegal, Greg. You don't think about that as a kid. You don't think about your parents maybe going to jail, anything along those lines. You just know something's wrong, like something's off, and you can't gather what it is. And that's when I really realized it that night. And his friend says to me, he goes, "Well, listen, glad you don't talk about it, but if you do talk about it, don't call it Coke. We want you to call it soda." And I'm like, great, yeah, that's fine. I'll call it soda. Yeah, whatever. Like, are we gonna get dessert? Like, this is great, And yeah, I'll call it soda. Like, no problem. But I write about it in the book. Like, what an awful moment. What a horrific moment. Now that I look back on it, where they felt that they had to talk to an 18-year-old kid, or 8-year-old kid, excuse me, and tell him to not talk about their cocaine use. And if I say anything, I should call it soda. And by the way, it makes no sense. Like, what I would start talking about soda to other little kids, like my parents do soda. Like just it's so stupid, so dumb, and in some ways so diabolical. I just realized just how messed up that whole situation was, and I get angry just thinking about it. But you know, um, it's a story of my life. I don't run from it. I knew that this book was inside me, and at the end of the day, the old saying, if you could help one person, I truly believe that. I truly believe if one person ends up reading this book and their life changes and they realize they're not the problem as the child, that there's a way out, then Greg, I've succeeded.
I'm confident that you will, because of how you wrote the book. It was so difficult to put down. When you talk about the anger that comes up from that particular memory, it makes me
Yeah.
think about just how devastating addiction can be for people. Not only were the people who are supposed to protect you, the parents, telling the dependent to basically cover up their tracks for what they were doing, but then also it just, I know this word gets thrown around a lot, and feel free to correct me if you'd rather use a different word, but I don't know if grooming's the right word, conditioning maybe, just kind of preparing you for this life. Like, no, this is okay, this is normal. Don't talk about it. Just tell kids that your parents do Sprite or Fanta or
Right,
something.
right, right. I think that's a really good point. I never really thought about it until I started writing the book. How my dad was he worked some real mental mind games on us, and there's no doubt about it. By the way, he never apologized, never once. Even when he came home after being arrested, and I write about a chapter I call piles, where if somebody if your house if anybody ever executes a search warrant on your house, it is not a pretty situation, basically everything in your house is thrown into a pile in the middle of the room while they search for drugs and money. And I had to clean all that stuff up by myself. And even at that moment, my father didn't come home, or when he came home after my grandparents bailed him out and my mother out, never apologized. So you're right. There's a lot of conditioning that goes on. I can think about it now. I remember how my father played my sister and I off our mother. There was a lot of mental cruelty involved. I write about in the book, and I think I include that in the excerpt list. I brought an average report card home, not a bad report card. I brought an average report card home, and this is a guy who has made my life hell. I'm up late at night caring for my mother because he's never home. She was basically drunk every night, and several times it escalated, and she would talk about killing herself and everything else, and I'm not sleeping, so my grades are suffering, and then he has the nerve to basically kick the crap out of me and say, you don't bring this kind of grades home. And I'm thinking, well, why do you think I'm bringing these grades home? But I always tried to, despite all that, despite moments, Greg, where I'd be angry with him, I still wanted to please him. And I think a lot of that had to do with the conditioning. And it didn't hurt he was 5'10" and overweight, but that made him seem even bigger. So he's like 5'10", 240, 250 pounds, and I'm a little kid. So there's an intimidation factor there as well. But I think you make an excellent point. There's all these moments in the book that I sort of sew together that really are exercises by my father in conditioning us to do what he wants done, to live the life he wanted to live, to do whatever he wanted. My father, at the end of the day, was just an incredibly selfish human being who wanted things his way and no other way. And if you ever question him, you were wrong, and how dare you? And it took a long time for me to figure that out. It took a long time for me to separate the part of my father that I loved, because no matter how bad our parents are, we still love them because they're our parents. It took a long time for me to look at all the things he did mentally to us to get what he needed to get done. And I even talk about in my book later on when he starts to feel vulnerable, when things are spiraling out of control for him, when he starts to feel like he's being watched by the police and they're tapping our phones and everything else that's involved with that. Um, he started telling me things because he was afraid he was about to get caught. He was afraid that something was going to happen to him. And who does he confide in? At that point, I'm a teenager. At that point, his teenage son. And just think about all the mental gymnastics that he pulled on us. And it's a miracle my sister and I turned out as good as we have.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, again, I think that's exactly what makes this book so powerful. The fact that you were able to overcome, I'm not going to say all of it, as we were even talking before we started recording, how, there's a process to all this. Yet you've overcome so much of it that you're able to finally write about it, to talk about it. And I guess I wonder, for other people who either experienced such things during the same time period, or as very insightfully pointed out, are experiencing such things now: opioids, fentanyl, all this stuff that is affecting a lot of people across America and the world. I wonder what sorts of things you could recommend to them to help them through these very difficult life situations.
Well, the first thing I would say is it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And a lot of times you think it is. I thought it was. I thought I was inadequate. I thought my father's mad at me. I let him down. Maybe if I was a better son, he'd be a better father. Maybe if I was a better son, my mother would be a better mother. And that's just not the case. So first of all, it's not you. And secondly, you have to just believe in yourself, and you have to start thinking about ways that I can separate myself from my parents. And that's not always clear, Greg. There were a lot of times I write in my book, like, I need to get out of here, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know what's going to happen. And finally, college was it for me. And I put myself through college, a lot of student loans too. But for me, college was my escape from my family. But it's for me, not forgetting who you are and not forgetting that you don't have to become your parents. And I know that's not a great answer, Greg. Like, it's not like, okay, if you just turn this key, everything will be fine. You open this door and everything will be fine. I understand that. But that's how it was for me for the longest time is I didn't know. I didn't even know where the door was. Forget the key. I didn't even know where the door was. And you just have to keep believing in yourself. I knew that I had value. Somehow, intuitively, I knew that I was smart enough to have a better life. Somehow I knew I had potential to get out of there and have the kind of life I'd wanted to have, I would want to have. And sometimes all you have, Greg, is that self belief. And I tell you, it's a powerful thing. It is really, really powerful. I would not be sitting here talking to you today if there wasn't something innate inside me that said, you can do this. You can get out of this. And I guarantee you, everybody watching your show right now who is asking themselves, how do I get out? I guarantee you, you have it. I guarantee you have it inside. You just have to figure out what that is. And I was able to figure it out what it was for me, but it's never too late and you can get out and you do not have to become your parents or whoever that person is in your life that has this unfair control over you and has done you wrong. um, you have it inside you and I'm a firm believer, and I hope when people read this book they say, you know what, if he could do it, I can do it too.
I'm confident you'll be able to reach people that way. And I agree with you. There is that inner strength, that inner spirit that can get very dark and dampened through such difficult situations. I encourage people to try to find that light, try to find that spark, whether it's through, a little biased, meditation, or whether it's
Right.
through psychotherapy, or whether it's through a crisis line or something, to get
Right.
out there and get help, because you don't have to be the person that someone struggling with addiction and potentially being manipulative as well is wanting you to be. You don't have to call it soda if you don't want to. And I'm so grateful that you have shown there is a path forward, there is an escape, and not only is there an escape, but you can then also move on to be a successful person in your life. So there is so much more that I want to talk about, and yet I recognize we're already going a little
Right.
long. So,
Right.
Dave, where can people learn more about you, interact with you, and just learn from you?
Sure. I have a company, La Torre Communications, been in the public relations world for about a quarter century now, as you indicated at the top. And you can find me at latorrecommunications.com. If you just have questions and you want to talk to me directly, you can email me. My email is david at latorrecommunications.com. It's david at LATORRE communications.com. You can also find me on Twitter. Greg, I wish I could remember what my Twitter handle is, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. But
You
if you
sent
did a
them all
search,
to me, so I will
right,
put
right,
them in the
right,
show notes. So if
right.
you like, hey, I'm on Twitter, I want to find him. Go look in the description. They're there.
Thanks. And one other thing I did want to say though is you're dead on about therapy. Psychotherapy has been very, very helpful to me. That's been part of my trail from my childhood into my adulthood. It's helped me deal with a lot of repressed issues and anger issues that I had for the longest time that in many ways I'm still working on. I'm a big believer in it and supporter of talking with somebody outside of your circle who has a skill set to really help you see things in a different way without sort of the personal family relationship perspective. So big believer in therapy and highly encourage it.
Love it. So am I.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm a little
right.
biased. So it's like I devoted my life to it or something. But
Right.
but no,
Well,
it has
keep up the good
been
work.
an absolute pleasure having you on. Again, you can check out Dave's socials in the description below, as well as his company. Um, The book Soda is coming out next year, 2027. So we're getting a big jump on it. Dave,
Right.
I'd love to have you back on if you're open to it, closer to the release of the book so we can talk more about it. You mentioned, if I sell one copy, I mean, you've already got me sold. So as soon as it's up for
You bet.
pre-order, you let me know and I'll purchase it, and I will remind my audience as well to do so because it's an excellent read. But again, thank you so much for being on
Thank
the
you.
show. Everyone else, thank you for listening to this interview. I hope you learned something. If you did, if you enjoyed it, as always, please leave a 5-star rating, review, like, comment, share, all that jazz that we're supposed to ask about. It really helps the show grow. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, be safe, be well, be powerful.